All right, Vas, on the subject of Sidemount now, because I get a lot of emails and questions about it. People really liked the some of the reviewing we've done for different harnesses and the configuration videos of how to set them up. And also, we did lots of finning reviews, if you remember. You know, we took different fins, we did our testing on them, and we give our thoughts on what works and then what works for us, and what might work for different people, dry suit, wetsuit. So no one's arguing they're great videos. What we're actually getting is that the people are asking more questions. Can you test this particular fin? Can you test this one, this one? And models are coming out all the time. They're also asking us if we can do, because we know the fin reviews in magazines, they're ultimately paid for, and I don't know who's really testing them, but you know, giving this star and that star. I mean, that's not what we do, is it? We actually go and fin in all the different styles of kicks and give our actual opinion on how useful that is. Now, in terms of harnesses as well, there's a lot of things that translate to different harnesses, and you know, I try to tell people, look, I can make anything work. You know, I can take pretty much any harness, and then as long as the D-rings are in the right place, the loop bungeons at the right height, there's a correct tension on there, the bolt snaps on the cylinders in the correct place, the regulator configuration works, the way you clip it in works, the weighting is adjustable in some way, and the wing lifts in a certain way and position on the body, then it will work. Anything will work. So do we need to get super excited about all these different harnesses? And is it useful for us to review every single one? And what's your take on it, really?
Well, I guess that's probably really the reason for the engineering series, right? When you start side mount diving and you see a harness for the first time, and then you see another one, and of course the logical questions are going to be, you know, what's better? You know, why should I pick A? Why should I pick B? And it's something to do with thinking your diving will be different or better if you have A, B, or C, which I do understand. And of course, you know, it's like anything, when you're making a purchase, you want to make sure that you don't get caught out, that you buy the right thing. And what I've probably come to realize is that you're going to make a better decision if you understand the ingredients of the thing. So, you know, you talked about just now, listed some things about the harness. In a back-mounted twin set, right, you've got a relatively straightforward setup, you know, a metal plate of some kind with some webbing. So adjusting that to fit your body is relatively straightforward, and it's very fixed. In side mount, one of the first differences is that it's variable. So for me, the first thing that I learned or wanted to learn was, well, you know, where should it be? What, you know, should it be this big, that big, you know, and really, I never got the answer until I understood why. Why does the waistband need to be where it is? So when I'm teaching divers and when I'm teaching side mount instructors, and you talk about the harness, well, there really is only one important part of the harness, and that's its job is to make the cylinders get held onto the body. That's what it's for. In back mount, the harness doesn't do that. The back plate does that, right?
Yes.
So our job, you know, we've got two ends of our tank, right? At the top end, we know we've got a bungee of some kind. Yes, it could be a choker. Yes, it could be a ring system, but it's like an attachment of some kind. And there's one at the bottom end. Well, you know, where they are depends on how tall you are, right? And how much you want the tank up your body or down your body. So as long as there are two anchor points, it doesn't matter who's made that harness. It doesn't matter what brand of webbing or, you know, that's just not interesting. What's interesting is that they're in the right place. So if you can understand that they need to be positioned for you. So if you have a system that's fixed, probably not the right system, right? If you have a system with lots of adjustment. Now, some systems now vary in how easy that adjustment is. I'm not going to argue that. But ultimately, it's webbing moving through a tri-glide, moving through a slot of some kind. So it's not especially challenging to lengthen something or shorten something. Fine, some systems it's a Velcro tab that you open up, you slide it, close the Velcro. Other systems, there might only be one adjustment point that's up at the neck, and that translates all the way down to the harness. So yes, it's true that they might be easier or harder, but I don't change my height, right? So I'm only really doing this once.
Yeah.
So I'm not particularly worried if it's a 5-minute job or a 20-minute job.
So if we agree then that the harness itself can be configured to fit the body, that's a good thing. So one that's adjustable is great. If it's not adjustable, you're limited, you're making a compromise. Not so great. That's great. So so harnesses, we got it. There's only really another two differences for me, and that's the wing it uses, how it lifts, and the weight system options it has and where the weights can go in terms of being able to trim that diver. So you just expand on maybe those two.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the wing, I guess you've really got two main things. One is the quantity of lift, and the other is the placement of that lift, how low down, how high up. So it is true that there is some variation there. If you look at two of the most popular systems, you have systems from X-Deep, systems from Razor.
Yep.
Razor has this, let's call it bad reputation of being a ball, a beach ball, a turtle back. And one of the consequences is that the lifting point is higher up the diver.
Yeah.
With the X-Deep, the lifting point is lower
down
the diver. So if you have a diver that's wearing heavy fins or has heavy legs, well, you want the lift lower down. If you're wearing canisters, things on your crotch, it makes sense that that's where you want the lift. If you're doing, for example, dives where there's more weight up at the top end, so you're diving multi-stage, for example, and you have cylinders that are lifting, it doesn't make sense to have the lift at the bottom. You want the lift at the top. And in the extreme examples, people will put a second bladder behind the neck.
What I want to challenge there, though, Vass, is that people might get listening to that, they might think that, oh, well, now I have that problem. I should definitely not have the Razor and have the X-Deep, where I know the answer is not true, because what I want to say is that you've got a weight system where you're going to add weight up and down that harness. And am I right in saying that where you put the weight has a way bigger impact than any of this wing difference you're now talking about?
Yeah, well, that's part two, isn't it? And so I'm 85 kilograms, right? And I'm about 180 centimeters tall. So there's more kilos and more distance in my body than there is in, let's say, the 30 centimeters of adjustment or 40 centimeters of adjustment of the weights. So right now, in the summertime in Gozo, I'm wearing about 1 kilo, right? And in the wintertime, it's 6 kilos. So I can move that through a 30 to 40 centimeter distance. But I'm much longer and I'm much heavier. So the first thing to say is that the weight position is much less significant than my human body to begin with, right? Yeah. So it's a much smaller target that we're playing with. And if we think now, the amount of lift that you need for a correctly weighted diver is always the same based on the number of tanks you're carrying.
Yeah.
So just to put a number on that, it's around 4 kilograms of gas weight that I'm carrying at the start compared to the end.
Sure.
So my wing is always going to start with 4 litres, roughly, more at the start compared to the end.
Yep.
So the wing has 4. So the lifting point is controlling where that 4 goes. But now the weights that I need aren't connected to the 4.
No.
They're connected to my body type, the cylinders that I'm diving, and the garments that I'm wearing.
Quite right.
So that could be 2, could be 4. Some places that could be as much as 10.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm diving in cold water, I'm wearing the thick undergarments. So moving 10 up and down has a lot more than moving 4, what might only be a 10 centimetre difference.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the lifting point of the wing, yes, it is a physical variable, but it's not as dramatic as the lead that I can move.
Yeah.
Especially if you then say, well, actually, I've now got a fin that I've chosen for my finning style, and it just so happens that I've chosen a positive fin.
Yeah.
Or a negative fin. Now, someone like yourself, I mean, you're another foot taller than me, right? So any changes you make at that far end of your body,
yes,
because of leverage,
has a greater impact.
Has a much bigger impact.
Yeah.
So again, it reduces the impact now of this lifting point that's on your back.
Yeah.
And then to go one level further, I would say, well, if you're now diving a dry suit, the whole thing is almost out of the window.
Again, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because moving the wing lifting point, well, I can move gas through this entire I mean, in centimeters, 180 centimeters
Sure.
in feet, 5
And
foot 10.
the arms outstretched and the legs outstretched. Yeah.
So arguing about the lifting point of the wing, for me, becomes a bit redundant. I think you've missed the point a little bit.
Yeah. And I just want to add one little thing there is that at the end of your dives, when you're correctly weighted, which you always are, you have no gas in the wing anyway.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because that's what people have to draw from this. The gas is only to support the air weight in the cylinders.
Absolutely.
The air weight you're going to breathe.
Absolutely.
If you're using CCR, okay, a bit different.
Sure.
Potentially, because you're not using that gas, potentially. Yeah.
I think on top of all of that, you have to say, well, look, it's a diminishing return to move the weight by 1 centimetre, 2 centimetre. It's much easier for me to look up to adjust my trim. It's much easier for me to put my hand down. I'm made of muscle, right? Same as you, same as everyone. We can move.
Yes.
And of course, we want to do the minimum work, but you're going to end up in a position whereas if you believe that the lifting point moving 5 centimetres is having a dramatic impact on you, what I'd probably say is that there are some other essential skills that you're probably going to benefit from if we can get into that. What kind of body tension are you holding? How much control do you have in the hip region, for example?
Yep.
What's happening in your lower back, in your hamstrings? So I think that in order to be, if I went and bought a Ferrari, I'm not going to drive it particularly well because I haven't had any training in driving fast cars, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you've already trained, you can probably drive my truck faster than the Ferrari, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And I think that's what I always took from it when, we can put on anyone's harness, we can switch from side mount to back mount, and it doesn't appear to have a big impact on us.
Yeah.
And it isn't because we happen to have picked the right equipment with the right weight placement. It's because we're unconsciously correcting for whatever we need to do in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a nutshell, these harnesses that people are getting really excited about, they really don't have, as much impact as people believe they have, right? They're overthinking it. You might like a certain brand, that's great. Your local dive center sells only that. Okay, but we're just saying apply what we're trying to tell you here. Buy our online series, to do with Sidemount as well, and it will give you all, and the whiteboard series, of course, and it will tell you, what it is you need the harness to do and how it should do it. And then it's really up to the person to decide if that system can be made to work that well. Of course, we give you some advice. If you call us for a course, we can tell you what we probably would accept and what we would say, look, if you bring that, maybe we're better off giving you a harness during your program that we think is better. You dive it because we can customize the weights, the fitting, everything you've talked about. And then, honestly, if you still want to try your system you brought with you, please do. And then at the end, we'll see if you want to keep using that or ours. And we ultimately know the outcome a lot of the time. So without naming names and going into lots of things, there's a reason why certain harnesses we believe work better for people.
Well, it's worth talking about that last point, which is really about the suitability for diving, right? And, we know that the lifting point and the weight positions, we know that impact isn't as big as perhaps people might believe. But you've got the features of the unit, right? Some units might look more elegant by default, right? And for someone might say, well, I like that because it's aesthetic. And great, absolutely, that might be true. Is it going to translate into you being a better diver? Well, that's probably a no. So, sometimes when you make a choice based on how it looks, that might not be the full story. But then there's a choice based on how it performs in terms of its features and functions. So I've seen some wings, for example, which have got a horseshoe shape.
Yeah.
And as a consequence of that, it's easier to trap the gas in one side and not the other.
Yeah.
And the divers might have a harder time disproportionately diving that compared to a flat wing where the air cells more even across the body.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a function, right? Similarly, where are the dumbbells on these units? A lot of people will tell you that certain wings, the dumbbells are harder to reach. And my belief is that's true. Not for everyone, but for some people who have an anatomical shape, where they're physically a certain shape, the dump is just in a bad location for that person. Might not be everyone, but again, that's a function thing. So it's not about which brand that is. That's about you and the
Yeah.
human. You know, we've seen, we know that there are certain wings that how easy they are to hold onto the body, how easy can you pin them down. By default, some units don't come with a very good system to pin them down. So we've had to modify a little bit to make that unit hug the diver a little bit better.
Yeah.
And that's more like a form thing rather than necessarily a function thing.
Sure.
So they, for me, they're the types of difference, when you then get into the design of it, how easy is it for me to change the webbing? How easy is it for me to change a D-ring? That's depending on where it's fixed onto the unit.
Yeah.
I personally prefer the wings that are separate from the harness. If I've got to change one or change the other, it's my personal preference. So there's a little bit of that subjective side
in there as well. Yeah.
But I have divers using all kinds of stuff, and I'm teaching them frog kick the same way. I'm teaching them the correct weighting the same way.
Sure. And just going a little bit more into that, the fins then, what do you see? Is it worthwhile us grabbing every fin on the market and testing it? I mean, what is it you've got to say about fins?
So it's a very similar story in the sense that there are many more fins rather, than the reasons for changing fin.
Yeah.
So for me, you basically got a weight of a fin, right? You've got its stiffness,
Yeah.
and you've got its physical shape, right?
Yeah.
And they're really the main other than colour.
And length.
Yeah, the physical shape.
Physical shape, yeah.
Are they a short, stubby one, a long, thin one, big, fat blade, whatever it's going to be? And ultimately, what all those three ingredients do is translate into how does it feel on your foot, right? Now, people will say, for example, my legs are light, so I'll put heavy fin.
Yeah.
And from a trim perspective, you think you've solved that problem. But what you've really done is you've put more mass on the foot. So now the foot, every time it moves, it's having to drive more mass.
Yeah.
Well, that requires more muscle, that requires more effort.
Definitely.
That's going to become tiring. I'm going to get a cramp when I do that. And the opposite might be true. I've got heavy legs, I put a positive fin.
Yeah.
And you say, sure, okay, you've done that. But this fin is so light, you can't even feel it when it connects to the water. And so it isn't interesting to say this fin is the best fin.
Yeah.
It's more a case of, well, what's the impact of this fin? What do you need?
And just solely from a weighting point of view there, you'd have to look at this another way. If your goal is to get your trim good as a diver, that means you want it to be as neutral as possible for as long as possible. So let's say you got yourself neutral. Well, that means your legs are now neutral. So what kind of fin do you want? Well, a neutral to slightly negative or there, because that makes the most sense, doesn't it? If your body's neutral, your fin can be neutral. If your body's off, then you're compensating with a different fin. It is the wrong thing to do because you should have fixed the body first.
Absolutely.
And then the fin. So people always ask us, well, what do we use? Well, I generally have been seen in three types of fin, you could say. I have the Avanti Quattro, as we know, is a neutral fin. Depending on what fin strap you've got, it can be slightly negative. You've then got the OMS Slipstream that we both regularly use. This is what you would say is a neutral to negative, slightly negative fin. Again, pretty much neutral. In a dry suit boot, where you've got a little bit of mass there and buoyancy, it is pretty much a neutral fin on the foot. And the only other fin I use is something like the RK3, which has both the HD version if I'm in a dry suit and maybe if I'm in a wetsuit where, my feet are getting a little heavy because of the muscle mass in my legs, I would use the normal version that's a little bit buoyant. But that's about it. All work well. Yes, you do need a different finning style, and you'll go into that, I'm sure, of how to kick that blade. But of course, over all the years, I've adapted to whatever fin I put on. It's absolutely fine.
Well, I mean, it's that finning style that's probably that second ingredient. And, everyone's got a different feeling in their bodies, right? I know how it feels when I turn my foot. I know how it feels when I carve through the water, let's say. And some people will prefer a very positive feedback, so they'll like a stiff fin.
Yes, you can feel it.
Yeah. Others, they want a little bit more of a fold and a bend, so you might go for a softer material. So it's not really fair to say that this is what you need.
Yeah.
It's what do you need to make you perform. So I do think that you probably should try a couple of different things.
Yeah.
One that's a little softer, one that's a little bit stiffer. Personally, I prefer something in the middle to stiffer end, not ultra stiff.
Yeah.
But the fins that are very light, you mentioned the RK3, the positive version, I can't even feel that on my foot.
Yeah, and because you don't have the feedback, it doesn't feel right to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even tried, I think it's the Hollis F2, which is a very light fin.
The reason I didn't get on with them, they were so light as
Absolutely.
well. Light, sorry, and also short.
Yes.
And it was the shortness that just didn't do much for me.
So it's that feedback that you get from the water that's telling you what to do with your legs. And I will say that when you already have got good finning techniques, you can adapt much more easily to different fins.
Yes.
Because I already know how to move my ankle.
Yeah.
But when I'm learning, it's more important to get a fin. So that's why you'll see us, we're changing people's fins out.
Yeah.
Getting them to try 2, 3, sometimes even 4 types of fin.
Yeah, during the training. Yeah.
And it might be the first time they've experienced that. It's the first time they've realised. So it's come back to that first thing where if people don't necessarily understand those ingredients, why does it matter what my fin is made of? Why does it matter if it's heavy or light? So if you can understand the why, and then you can apply that to what you need, well, that's how you pick the fin. Or at least that's how you start.
Yeah.
One of the annoying things about fins is that you can't go easily to a dive shop. Say, look, I'm going to rent for the day 4 pairs of fins.
Yeah.
The good thing about where I am, we've got 2 or 3 dive centres where I can do that. They'll carry some RK3s. So I've actually got 4 sets of fins that I use for students. I've got 1 of each of these.
Yeah.
And, you can at least get a chance to try them when you come on board. Colour, I don't think is that interesting. Some people
comes later.
Some people get very excited about the colours. Yeah. But in terms of the fin, the only thing that I probably would add to that is there's probably a special circumstance where I do use a very heavy fin, which is when I'm in a twin set.
Yes.
So I have a manifold that's higher behind my neck. And if you look at the length of the back plate, there's a limit to how low down you can get your weight.
Yeah.
Sure, you can strap it onto the base of the cylinder, but that's a limit to how far down the body that's going to go. So to counteract the weight at the head, then the heavy fin...
Makes sense.
Yes. So sure, I have to adapt my finning style, and we've probably got some video of me using that in Mexico.
Yeah, definitely. And there's one extra thing that I want to say that's going to make the most sense of all of this, is that you could have the right fin for you, but if the foot pocket is the wrong size, it's all out the window. Because you've lost that ability, that contact with the fin to use it properly. Much like you said, you couldn't really feel the lighter fin that was too soft. Mm-hmm. You've got an even worse problem, haven't you, with a foot pocket that's not
moving in
the pocket. Yeah. And this is probably the biggest thing we see, isn't it, with people, is that problem.
Well, it's an interesting problem because some people think that they can solve that problem by just packing the foot pocket out.
Yeah.
I'll put 2 pairs of socks, 3 pairs of socks. Well, all you're really doing is you're just making it more spongy now.
Yes, or a thicker boot or something with it.
Yeah, and so you're just much better off getting stuff to fit you now. That does require going to dive centres, trying different boots, trying different socks.
Definitely.
And I think if you're going to get a dry suit, that's even harder to do.
Yeah.
Depending on whether it's a built-in boot or a sock.
Yeah.
So when I get suits now, I spend a lot more time with the dealer, forcing them effectively to make a nice shrink-wrapped sock for me.
Yeah, because you want the performance, and you don't need as much warmth as you think that people, they go a bit too crazy with that, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's probably worth saying that the suits with the integrated boot, you're generally starting out with more of a problem.
Yes, we're talking dry suits now. And then obviously with what you prefer, like me, is the sock style with a rock boot that's added after.
Absolutely, and it's really just about bringing your foot closer to the fin.
And it's worth saying as well, your rock boots you're choosing. I mean, we're not hiking here. Like we're not hiking mountains. You don't need this really thick, vibrant, massive, heavy sole that's probably very, very buoyant. Because now you would want to put a heavy fin on, but for all the same reasons we've just discussed, you're having issues with that. So again, try and get this, keeping it neutral in mind. Mm-hmm. The more neutral you can make something, the less swing it's going to have, and the easier it's going to be control. Mm-hmm. I think that's what people have to take away from this.
Probably one other thing that I would just add to that is about when you are wetsuit diving and you are going to find not only a buoyancy change as the suit crushes, it's going to cause a trim change.
Yeah.
In a sense that the neoprene itself is physically crushing, but there's more volume of neoprene around the legs and the ankles than there is at the torso, because of Pythagoras basically and the way the circles are. And so in the shallow part of your dive, you might find that your legs are more buoyant. And as you descend, your legs will become more negative.
Yeah.
So you can't pick a fin that's going to be perfect at all times in dive.
But if you had a neutral fin, you've got the best chance.
But also what I would say is that if you've got control over your body, if you can engage the hips, if you can engage your leg muscles, now you can correct for that.
Yeah.
You can solve the problem.
Sure.
And so I guess that for me is really why it's the equipment is just your tool to go diving.
Yeah.
Right? You're the diver that's doing the diving. The equipment's just kind of making it happen for you.
Yeah.
Right?
So again, that gets right back to all of it, doesn't it? If you think you can buy equipment that's going to do all the work for you, you're absolutely wrong here. It's a case of you need to do the work, and the equipment needs to support you. Now, we've just described you can definitely buy equipment that's better going to support you, and equipment that's going to not do as good a job. So hopefully people learn a lot from this, and it answers that final question that we get asked a lot of, can you test it? What about this harness? What about that feature? And again, you know, some of these features are nice, but they're not going to make a huge difference.
I think as we come across the stuff, of course, we'll definitely comment on it, but I don't necessarily think there's a lot of learning value. You know, we're not selling harnesses, you know, we're not selling fins. We can tell you why we're choosing what we choose, and of course, every time we use something, we'll certainly talk about it.
Yeah.
But I'm more interested in having people understand why something's better for them, rather than whether that's, you know, made by company A, B, or C.
Yeah.
You know, because the more they know, that's just going to make every decision that much more informed for them.